Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the official Nerd Talk channel. My name is Tyler, aka My Nerd, joined by my co-host AJ Reacts 2. We are back for another episode of Originals versus Remakes, and today we are bringing you an episode on The Strangers. Before anyone asks, "Oh, The Strangers Chapter 3 came out in February. Why are you guys doing this now?" Well, because I was watching the original Strangers, and I was like, I wouldn't mind doing an OVR for that, even though we put it out late. I wouldn't mind doing an OVR for The Strangers. I mean, why not? You can basically do it, even though the remake is a third of a trilogy. With the way that movie is made, you can make it an OVR. So why not? So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting with the original, The Strangers, released in 2008, directed by Brian Bertino, and he didn't really direct anything of note after this. He just did this movie. He directed a couple other movies that it doesn't seem like they were good, but this one is. So, The Strangers tells the story of a couple who it's kind of unclear if they break up or not. The husband proposes to her and she rejects it. So I mean,
Mhm.
he makes it looks like they're gonna break up, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Like they
They're
are
kinda
and
on
they
the
won't.
rocks.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're kinda on
but
the
it
rocks.
it tells the story of a couple. They're coming back from a wedding party of sorts,
Mhm.
and they get a knock at the door saying, "Is Tamara home?" And you know, these people just try to break into their well, not try. They do break into their house,
Yeah, and
and
it's a vacation home.
yeah, and they're trying to
Mhm.
survive.
Mhm.
So I saw this movie for the first time. I think a year before the new movies came out because the new movies were coming out. And at the time, I thought Chapter 1 looked good. And I was like, hey, I haven't seen the originals. I want to watch these. So I watched this in Pray at Night. Not a big fan of Pray at Night, but this movie I am a fan of. I very much enjoy The Strangers. I think it's a really cool home invasion movie. It's really intense, and I think the best thing about it is how subtle it is. There's not, you
100%.
know, freaking jump scares every 5 seconds. The best scare in the movie, it's the one on the poster, it's the one everyone knows. It's just her in the house, just vibing, and the dude just casually walks in the frame, and you're just like, oh, and then he walks away. And I love things like that in horror when you know somebody's there, and then the characters don't, and they're just oblivious. Like I like that.
Mhm.
We only have two leads here. Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman. I think they do a good job in their roles. I think it's shot very well. It kind of has a low key grindhouse feel to it. And I think the movie's very intense. There's some really cool sequences in here, and the best thing about this movie, which we will talk about with the other movie, that it fails so miserably at, is that we don't know why anything is happening. There's no setup to it, and normally you get a movie like that, and you're like, "Oh, that's a detriment to the movie." This movie, it doesn't matter because there's no setup for these killers. They're just killers. They're strangers. That's their thing. They show up, they do what they gotta do, and they're out. They say it at the end of the movie. Spoilers. They say, "Oh, why are you doing this? Because you were here." And that's terrifying. Just the thought of, oh yeah, you got invaded because you were here. You just happened to be here. It could have been anybody, but it was you. Um the biggest negative probably for this movie is that these characters have the IQs of a thumbtack, bro. They are just the things that they do sometimes are just like, bro, what? The way spoilers, the movie is almost 20 years old. The way the brother dies is so
Mhm.
funny because this man just walks into the house and the door's filleted open by this point. He just walks into the house and just casually walking, not announcing himself. Hi, I'm here. Hello, is anybody here? And then he just gets shot in the head. And it's like, see, you could blame the guy for shooting him, but at the same time, he's hiding from max killers. So yeah, I probably would have shot at the door too. Like, you're an idiot. Yeah. I enjoy the movie for what it is. It's a bit of a cult classic, and I can see why. I can see why people will watch this, be like, "Bro, I am never going into the woods ever again. I'm never going to a log cabin ever again." Nah, bro, yeah, I got it because that's creepy. What are your thoughts on The Strangers? Original.
So, I watched The Strangers a couple years before the pandemic. I remember it was like either 2018 or 2019 is when I first watched it. And I had been into horror for like a few years at that point. So, people were telling me, "Oh, this is the scariest movie you'll ever see. This is scary. It's so scary." Um, and I was like, "Okay, I mean, I guess I'll check it out." I checked it out, and upon first viewing, I wasn't expecting what I got. This is, like you said, it is a very subtle type movie, but it is very eerie, creepy, and just like the feeling of dread. You feel the feeling of dread watching this movie, like from the front to back. So I was expecting it to be like just kind of like a slasher, like people dying and getting killed and, gore and all that. But this movie doesn't need that. And I kind of didn't really accept it the way that it should have been accepted the first time I watched it. On rewatch back during the pandemic, I appreciated it a lot more. I could really hone in on the subtlety and the just looming presence of these killers. It's creepy, man. Like there are certain scenes where like it's just you don't even need to necessarily see the killer, but you just know that they're there. And it's like that it just sends shivers down your spine. There are a lot of different like intense moments in this film. You have Liv Tyler. There's a scene where she's outside and she like has to crawl on the ground, and you just see the killers like popping out of the darkness, like in the distance. It's very very unsettling. But I think she probably is the highlight of this movie. The acting is fine. The acting is passable, definitely. Um, but I think Liv Tyler is the standout. But overall, I really enjoy this movie. I think it took a rewatch for me to really appreciate it. But and the killers, man, I think their aesthetic is awesome. I love their aesthetic and like the masks, how they're different, how they just are just totally creepy. Um, yeah, so I really enjoy this movie. Like I said, it took a couple watches for me to really appreciate it, but I really enjoy it.
Right, now moving on to the remake. The Strangers Chapter 1, released in 2024, directed by Rennie Harlan, director of Long Kiss Goodnight, Deep Blue Sea, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, and tells the story of a couple who's they're very much they're engaged to be married. They're
Well,
going
they're not engaged, but they are dating.
okay.
They get engaged at the end of the movie while they're sitting
Um
there in the chair.
and yeah, and their car break. They're on their way to some party or something. I don't know, and they end up stopping in a small town, and their car breaks down. So then they have to go to an Airbnb where the strangers attack them.
Hmm.
So, Strangers Chapter 1. I saw this opening night because I was excited for this one. This one I was excited for. I remember when they announced this and they were like, "Oh, it's going to be a trilogy. They're going to release all three in the same year." Yeah, yeah, that happened. Uh and I was like, this could be kind of interesting. And I remember when we got the trailer for this, I was like, this looks kind of cool. But but I also said this looks like a pretty much shot for shot remake of the original. Why? Why? And the movie is pretty much a shot for shot of the original with added things. And the added things, oh, they're added, all right. And I thought about this. This may be the worst movie we've talked about on OVR. I think the only competition I think is the My Bloody Valentine remake. I'm pretty sure. This movie is absolutely horrendous. I This movie's bad. I've seen it twice. The once was enough, and then I watched it with AJ. The once was enough. Twice was enough. This movie's so bad I didn't even rewatch it when the other two came out because I was like, I'm good. First of all, this movie is so lazy. When you get past the added things that are in this movie, it's just a shot for shot remake. And it's not a very good one at that. The acting in this movie is absolutely horrendous. I don't know why I'm starting with the acting, but I'm going to start with the acting. The acting in this movie is absolutely horrendous. People say Madeline Petch was good in all three of these. Wow. No, she's not. I think she's better in two, and she gets nothing to do in three. She's not good in this. There's so many lines and just scenes where she is so unconvincing. The boyfriend might be worse. Oh man. Um the strangers themselves have an intensity to them, which I like. There are a couple sequences in this movie that I do like. There's one where they have to crawl under the house and not make any noise. I like that sequence. And then there's another sequence where they're in a house and she flickers the lighter and it reflects off the strangers' masks and they don't know that they're there. I was like, that's neat. I like that. Unfortunately, that is the only sense of subtlety you have in this movie because this movie is just riddled with jump scares over and over and over. It is nonsense. This movie is nonsense. This movie, see, this is where it's tricky to talk about it as a remake because it's a part one of a trilogy, but they kind of try to make it to where like, oh, everyone in the town, we see the town period that they're in, and like, oh, everyone's suspicious and all that. It's a part one of a movie, so it's really stupid to say that it goes nowhere. I've seen all three, it goes nowhere. um the movie is just it's boring. It's boring because, again, once you hit a certain point, it's just shot for shot. And it's not interesting. And somehow they have managed the feat of making these characters even stupider than the characters in the original. There is a scene in this movie where the boyfriend has the doll face stranger at gunpoint with a shotgun fully loaded and just proceeds to taunt her. It doesn't, he's like, oh, you know how they say your first kill is the hardest one? Well, mine was well, I did mine already, and proceeds to get whacked over the head, and then they get tied up in the chairs. I'm just like, that's like one of 5 moments in this movie where you're like, what are you doing, bro? There's so many just ludicrous moments, but the movie, it sucks. It sucks. This is bad. It's a bad remake, and I say remake, people might ask like, oh, why are you doing this as an OVR? Because it's such a shot for shot remake. It's a remake of the first movie. Like, it is. It really
Mhm.
is. It's not, I don't consider this a first chapter. I consider this a remake because it's so shot for shot. And I don't know why they thought, oh, let's start a new Stranger trilogy by remaking the original. I don't know whose idea that was, but they're an idiot. They're an idiot, and I don't know why they thought this was going to work. It's to the point where the movie has the same exact ending minus the stupid way they change it so that way you can get to the other ones. This movie's nonsense. It makes no sense. It's honestly awful. And I just I don't know why they thought this was a good idea to make this the first in a trilogy, but as the first of a trilogy, it's bad. As a remake, it's bad. It's really bad. What are your thoughts on the Strangers Chapter One?
I agree with a lot of what you said. I watched this movie with you for the first time when the film came to digital, and I absolutely hated it. I thought it was awful. I rewatched it for this OVR, and I was dreading it. I waited to the very last second to rewatch it. But I will say that I will say that yes, this movie is not good. Um, I do see the vision for what they were trying to do, what they were attempting to do. They wanted to make a Strangers remake for this, chapter one of the trilogy, um, executed horrendously in a lot of different ways. And I think for me personally, the worst part of this movie and what just kind of brings it down is the acting, number one, and the writing for the characters. I cannot connect to these characters whatsoever. And the delivery for like any of the, dialogue, things like that, just not believable, not convincing at all. I will say though, there are some scenes that with like intensity that aren't horrible, like the scene with them crawling under the house. I think the acting there was fine. It was very passable. Um, and also, I would want to say that the actual strangers, I still like their aesthetic. Not much has changed at all about them. Um, the way that they were handled in the movie, yes, there's like more jump scares, more in your face, things like that. But I still really enjoy the aesthetic of the strangers and their look, their looming presence. They're intense, and they didn't lose that with this. But just connecting with the characters, it just makes you not care about the movie. It does makes you not care about what's happening to them. The character decisions are just really asinine. Like it's just like
I love the part where she sees the strangers and she runs into the closet or something, and then the
mhm.
boyfriend comes and she's like, "Oh, like I saw it in the mirror," and then he he looks at the
He shows
wall or
the
something,
picture. The
and he's
picture.
like, "Oh, that's what you got scared of,
That's
right?"
what you saw. I was like, yo, what?
Bro, if your
You got
woman is
scared of the
saying
painting.
if your woman is saying she's scared, just entertain the idea and get her the hell out, bro. What are you doing? Oh, you got scared of a clown painting.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, like this, I see the vision very poorly executed. And I just wish it was better. Like I feel like they could have done a very um entertaining and creepy remake to this movie, if they would have changed more, if they would have had better actors and better writing. I feel like it was all there for them, but it just fell flat. That's my thoughts, man.
All right. Moving on to the similarities between the two. Obviously, the big one is that the killers are the same, and they look pretty
Mhm,
much similar in aesthetic to a point. The masks are kind of the same. Um,
mhm,
and then the core concept of the movie, the couple goes to the Airbnb or the cabin, whatever, and then they
mhm,
get attacked by the strangers. That core element of the movie is the exact same leading up to the ending, which they're one of the characters' fates anyway is the exact same. um
mhm,
yeah, that's and I guess even though the character that it happens to is different, the scene where they end up accidentally killing somebody is pretty much the exact same in terms of how it happens. They think it's the stranger, they shoot him in the head, and they're like, "Oh no, we accidentally killed somebody." All right, moving on to the differences. Obviously, the big one is that these two movies are different because one is a sole movie, and then the other one is part one of a trilogy. So, The Strangers Chapter One is kind of laying in some seeds, with the town being crazy to attempt to explain it later, of which it doesn't. Um, the other difference that the characters' names are different. They're not playing the same. They're playing the same characters in roles, but not by name.
mhm.
The strangers kind of have the same look, but they're dressed differently. So like I know the main guy, I don't know if he's Sackhead in the original, but I know he's Sackhead in the new thing. Sackhead in the original he wears like a suit and tie and stuff, and then the remake he wears kind of a jacket and
Like a
more
jacket,
casual
yeah.
attire. kind of like the more casual attire. I don't know.
I agree, actually.
I think the strangers in the remake are actually more intense than the that. Well, what I'm trying to say is in the remake they are more intense, and I
Yeah.
kind of prefer that. Like they're over here going Jack Torrance on doors, freaking
Mm-hmm.
busting through doors and stuff, and
Yeah.
that's the most consistent thing in the trilogy. And it's probably the best thing about the trilogy is that they are more intense. There's certain scenarios that, like I said, they are the same, but they're not. So the scene where they accidentally kill somebody in the original, it's the friend or brother of the guy, and then in the remake, it's this poor house owner who no, he owns the Airbnb and he was coming to check on them to see if they were okay, and this poor bastard gets shot in the head for it. Poor bastard. Just doing his job and he gets shot in the head.
Trying to check on my tenants.
What else? They so like the like I said before in the remake, they put an emphasis on the town and everybody being creepy. You have the one cop who's like he's a creep in everything. He was one of the cops from Rob Zombie Halloween 2. Um he's like they put such an emphasis on him, and they say like, oh, this has happened before.
They actually
The
show something at the beginning of the
Yeah,
movie. This guy's running in the forest and the strangers come and kill him. So that's
off
a
screen
difference too.
because God
Yeah,
forbid we get some gore.
it was
Um,
off screen.
yeah, get ready for that for all three of those movies. Um, the other thing that's different is like the situation that the couples are in. So in the original, they're like kind of on the fritz, kind of not, and then in the remake, they're like happy and they're like all lovey dovey and
Yeah.
stuff, I guess. Oh, I get the ending. So in the original, they get them tied up and they do the whole, well, why are you doing this? Because you were here, and they kill them both. Boom, that's it. And they think they take off the masks and they just walk off.
They do take off the
Um,
mask and then they drive away. But it's kind of weird because they have the thing with the Jehovah's Witness kids on the bike. And then this is something I didn't remember before I rewatched it last night. Um, the Jehovah Witness kids go into the house after the
then they
attack
see
or
them.
whatever, and they see them, and then Liv Tyler is still alive, and she like screams, and that's the jump scare of the end of the movie. Like she screams, she's like, ah, and that's the cut to black. I'm like, I do
Maybe
not remember that.
maybe that's the theatrical because I watched the unrated. The 4K is unrated. I
Uh
don't
huh.
remember. Maybe it's
Oh, maybe,
different.
yeah, maybe it's different. But
Maybe I just don't remember.
saw that last night, and I was like, I do not remember her being alive at the end of this movie. But yeah,
And then in the remake, they do the same exact thing, only the girlfriend doesn't die, and she
yeah,
ends up in the hospital, and that's how they set up Strangers Chapter 2.
right, right.
And then I guess the big difference is, like I said, the remake is a chapter one of a trilogy, and then the original is just its own thing, which kind of shows which one should have been because the original works so much better. You know, I know people love Pray at Night. I don't. I actually think Pray at Night is garbage. I think the first one it should have just been its own thing. You know, it should have just been its
I
own
agree.
thing. You could have maybe tried remaking it as one movie, but I think The Stranger should have just been its own movie. Could have been its
Yeah.
own creepy cult classic movie. But no, now we have, you know, a garbage trilogy and then Pray at Night tarnishing its whatever legacy it had.
Oh, another difference is the ages of these couples. I feel like
Yeah,
in the
it's
remake, they're
different.
like Gen Z, like they're really young. They're like 20, and then in the original, they're like in their 30s. They've lived some life, and I feel like that is more interesting to me. Not that I dislike Gen Z stuff, but it's just for me personally, I think
Well,
the ages of those characters are more intriguing with what is happening.
well, it would help if the acting wasn't atrocious either. So,
True, very true, very true.
moving on to the definitive version, obviously it's the original Strangers. The original Strangers is a great claustrophobic horror movie. I love it. I think it's really intense. It's really cool, And it shows, it demonstrates my favorite kind of horror where you just have a limited set of characters, a limited environment, and you just go and do what you got to do. It's an indie horror movie, and sometimes indie horror, sometimes it's better than mainstream horror at points. And the prime example of that is The Strangers Chapter 1. Mainstream horror, and it's garbage, and it's no effort was put into it, and yeah, it's a garbage entry in that trilogy. The trilogy itself was garbage, and now because of that, we'll probably never get another Strangers anything ever again, which I am perfectly fine with because I only need the original. So
Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Yeah, for me, the definitive version is definitely the original. That chapter one, man, it had potential and it was squandered. But yeah, we still have the original, so that's what I'll be rewatching.
that is going to do it for this episode of Originals versus Remakes. So if you guys enjoyed the video, if you guys did enjoy it, please do a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell for all notifications for future Nerd Talk live streams and videos. Our next OVR, if I'm not mistaken, will be for The Mummy in preparation for Lee Cronin's The Mummy releasing that month in April. So hope you guys are looking out for that. We will see you on the next episode of Originals versus Remakes. Bye. Have a good one.